This house will be mine sooner or later. As for you, you belong out there on the streets in some forgotten corner." Cecilia looked at me with the eyes of someone born to take what isn't theirs. Her greed was so palpable, I could almost hear it swallowing other people's dreams whole. She jabbed her finger at my face, lips curling into a venomous smirk. "This Christmas, my house will host the guests. You'd better make yourself scarce. Stay out of the way if you know what's good for you." I stood still, no reaction, no defense, because right then and there, I'd already made up my mind. If she wanted to turn Christmas into her stage, I'd give her a performance she'd never forget. 5 cans of paint, perfectly disguised. A mini fireworks rig is hidden inside the chandelier. A hidden camera was placed precisely at the kill angle. A Christmas gift so meticulously crafted, Cecilia was bound to lose her mind with joy when she received it. How about you? Is your daughter-in-law so brazen that it makes you want to rise one last time just to reclaim your voice? What state are you in? What would you do if there were a Cecilia in your life? Want to see the truth ripped wide open down to the bone? Hit follow. Drop a comment with what you would have done in my place. And don't blink. The next part is going to burn hotter than a Christmas house fire. I've always loved Christmas. That moment when the light slipped through every window frame, the faint scent of baked goods lingers in the air, and old songs hum gently through the house I've lived in for over 30 years. To me, it was never just a holiday season, but a testament to the peace I had spent a lifetime preserving. This year, I prepared everything as usual, slowly, carefully, hoping Daniel, my only son, would come home. I rehung the old ornaments he once loved, changed the water in the fake flower pots I planted on the porch, then sat down and imagined a warm Christmas filled with his laughter, his wife's, and my own. After years of silence and endurance, I still believed I could mend the tiny fractures in our family. But perhaps faith is sometimes just a blade wrapped in gift paper. That afternoon, as the last ray of sunlight slid across the floor, the door flung open without a knock. Cecilia appeared. The scent of expensive perfume invaded the familiar room, smothering the aroma of the cookies I'd just baked. Her footsteps echoed evenly, decisively, like someone who'd long considered this place hers. I watched her scan the room, her gaze cold and inspecting. My first feeling wasn't anger, but a vague fear, that familiar sense of a homeowner being pushed out of their own house. She didn't look at me when she spoke, her voice high and laced with arrogance. "This Christmas, I'm hosting 30 guests here." I turned unsure if I'd heard correctly. The words sliced through the quiet I'd cherished. She dropped onto the sofa, pulled out her phone, tapping away like she belonged to everything in this room. I forced a small smile, my voice trembling slightly. 30 guests? That's quite a lot. And what about me, dear? She looked up, eyes cold as steel, mouth curling faintly. "Anywhere's fine, just don't be in front of me." Her words dropped to the floor like a heavy stone. I froze. For a moment, I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing in the house had changed, yet everything suddenly felt unfamiliar. The family photos were still there, the curtains still swayed gently in the breeze, but between her and me, the distance had grown far beyond the silent years. I forced another smile, but my voice caught. "What did you say?" Cecilia set her phone down, crossed her arms, and stared with thinly veiled disdain. "I already said I'm hosting the party. This house is spacious, elegant, and perfect for entertaining. You should take a break. Don't do anything. Just stay out of the way." I tried to remain calm, studying her more closely. I was used to that polished exterior since the day Daniel brought her home. It had always been fake smiles and calculated sweetness. But never had I imagined a day when she'd boldly strip me of my place in this very home. In her eyes, I was no longer her husband's mother, just an obstacle, an outdated fixture with no more value. Outside, the wind howled, dry leaves swirling at the window. I felt like someone standing in a storm without shelter. This house was once the place my ex-husband and I built, the place that held Daniel's first cries, the place I promised myself I'd grow old peacefully. But now, every wall seemed to obey Cecilia's commands. I looked down at my hands trembling, not with anger, but pity for myself for having yielded for too long, letting others believe my silence meant weakness. Cecilia stood voice smooth, as if signing a contract. I'll invite my relatives, some of Daniel's colleagues, and a few close friends. Everyone will be here. Oh, don't worry, I'll hire someone to clean up, no need for you to bother. I could hear the triumphant pride in every word. She had planned everything, calculated it all, and I was merely a detail to be erased so her picture could be perfect. I stepped back lightly, resting against the chair. Memories flooded in. The day she first walked into this house, I told myself to open my heart, to let my son be happy. I tried to learn to call her daughter, even when the word caught in my throat. I believed that patience could fix the small cracks in our family. But it turns out my silence had only laid the foundation for her arrogance. Do whatever you want, but I meant to say more, but Cecilia turned away, hand raised as if to end the conversation. I don't need you to teach me how to take charge, just don't get in my way. Then she walked to the door, her heels clicking sharply each step, carving into the tiles the marks of conquest. I watched her back until the door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the house, soft yet heavy. The room fell into silence. I could hear the ticking clock on the wall as if counting down to something about to break. I sat down, hands clenched tightly together, trying to steady my breath. A cold chill ran down my spine, not from the weather, but from the realization I had likely known all along. After all these years, this house was no longer mine. I looked around, trying to reassure myself, to believe that something here still belonged to me, but every corner bore Cecilia's imprint. The new crystal glasses on the table weren't mine. The cream-colored curtains she replaced last week weren't mine. Even the painting I once chose with my husband, she had taken it away. I didn't recognize this place anymore. I ran my hand across the wooden table, fingertips brushing over the old scratches. I remembered past Christmases when Daniel was little, running around the tree, laughing through the house. Back then, everything was simple, pure. I thought those memories would shield me from loneliness, but now they only deepened the pain because I realized I was repeating my own mother's mistake, the woman who stayed silent until she was pushed out of her own life. I stood and looked out the window. Christmas lights from the neighbor's house flickered. Children laughed, adults chatted. The world seemed happy except for me. I took a deep breath, something shifting in my chest like a small crack opening. Maybe it was the start of anger or of freedom. I didn't know. I only knew that from this moment on, I would no longer let anyone treat me like I was nothing. Outside, the wind lashed against the porch, rattling the windows. I closed my eyes gently, listening to my heart beat slow and steady. Everything inside me was breaking apart and coming back together. And in that moment, I understood I had to do something. Not to seek revenge, but to reclaim the part of my life that had been taken from me. I sat in silence for hours after Cecilia left. The house sank into stillness, broken only by the heavy ticks of the clock. In my mind, every word she had said twisted over and over like a dull blade. I wanted to believe that Daniel, my son, would never let his wife say such things if he truly understood. I wanted to believe he still remembered the mother who spent her youth building everything for him. But when my hand trembled as I reached for the phone, I knew exactly what I feared. I feared that call would take away the only thing I had left, trust. I dialed Daniel's number. The ringing stretched long. I almost exhaled in relief when I heard his voice. "Mom?" His tone was warm as always, but beneath it lingered a cold detachment I had never grown used to. I told him everything Cecilia had said, every word. I tried to stay calm, not to blame anyone, just to help him see that the boundary between me and his wife was fading unacceptably. On the other end, Daniel stayed silent for a moment, then sighed softly. "Mom, don't blow things out of proportion. I know Cecilia can be blunt, but she didn't mean anything by it." The chill gripped my chest. I asked again, "You think I'm blowing it out of proportion? She told me to leave my own home." Daniel replied, "She just wants to throw a party, that's all. Just take a break, Mom. Don't overthink it." His voice was steady, weary, like an office worker trying to end an annoying call. I paused for a few seconds, then said, "Daniel, don't you see she's crossing a line?" He gave a short, dry laugh. "Mom, I know you're still not used to her lifestyle, but please don't add more tension. It's Christmas. People should be happy." Happy? That word landed in my ears like mockery. Maybe to him, happiness only existed if his mother stayed silent. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Don't you see how she treats me? I'm not a maid in this house, Daniel." On the other side, he sighed heavily. "Mom, I know you've sacrificed a lot, but sometimes you're a little harsh. Cecilia's sensitive. She's been through pain. You should go easier on her." I froze, the question I feared most rising in my mind. "What pain are you talking about?" Daniel fell silent, then spoke quietly. "The miscarriage, don't you remember? I know you didn't mean to, but I think your pressure stressed her out and led to it." I went numb. Every word struck my chest like a hammer. The room spun. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "You think I caused your wife to lose the baby?" I asked, voice hoarse. "I'm not saying it was your fault, but you have to understand, the things you said back then hurt her deeply." I remembered that night, Cecilia sobbing in the hospital, pointing at me and screaming that I killed her baby. I remembered Daniel holding her, not looking at me once. I had thought time would help him see the truth behind that accusation. But now, hearing his voice, I knew he never believed me. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened. "Daniel, I never wanted that to happen. I prayed every day for that child. I loved it like I love you." But Daniel cut in. "Mom, it's over. Don't bring it up again. She's trying to move on, and you should too." A sentence soft as a breeze, yet powerful enough to extinguish everything I had ever been as a mother. I wanted to scream, to ask why he found it easier to believe his wife's words over looking into his mother's eyes. But all I heard was the long beep when he hung up. The screen went black, reflecting my face exhausted, heavy, aged by decades in just minutes. I gripped the phone, bit my lip until it bled. A strange feeling swelled inside, both hollow and aching. My son, the boy I taught to love and respect, now stood with the one who stripped me of all dignity. I tried to calm myself, hoping maybe Cecilia had twisted the story. Maybe Daniel was just confused. I decided to call her. No matter what, I needed to hear those words directly from her lips to know how much of the story was a lie. The phone rang a few times before she answered. Her voice was sharp and cold like a blade. "What now, Margaret? Wasn't that enough?" I took a deep breath. I just want to ask, what did you tell Daniel? Why does he think I caused your miscarriage? There was silence for a few seconds, then a quiet, bitter laugh. Because it's the truth. That baby died because of you. I was stunned. What are you saying? Cecilia laughed again, voice rising with every word. You stressed me so badly. I couldn't sleep, always preaching, interfering in everything. You wanted to control my every breath. You didn't kill me, but you killed my baby. Don't drive me insane. Then she hung up without hesitation. I sat frozen, the phone slipping from my hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. I stared into the darkness ahead, my mind blank. Everything collapsed. Years of tolerance, forced meals, tears swallowed just to keep peace, all of it now meaningless. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the night had fully fallen, and Christmas lights sparkled like they were mocking me. My breath fogged the glass. I remembered every hug, every Merry Christmas Daniel had once said as a child. How he held my hand, promised that no matter how old he got, he'd never let me be alone. That promise was dead now, buried with the baby he believed I destroyed. I returned to my room. The house suddenly felt twice as big, chilling to the bone. On the table, the family photo remained. Me, Daniel, and Cecilia. She smiled brightly, while I, in that picture, smiled faintly, the smile of someone trying to believe this family could be whole. Now I saw my face as that of a fool. I sat on the bed, hands trembling, trying to breathe without breaking down. Tears welled up, but then retreated inward. In my ears still echoed that ice-cold sentence. That baby died because of you. It wasn't just an accusation. It was the end of everything I had fought for. I stared into the darkness, swallowing the room. Images flickered through my mind. The tiny hand of the unborn child, Daniel's face as he held his wife in the hospital, and the gleam in Cecilia's eyes every time she saw me in pain. I realized then the worst pain wasn't the insult. I knew my own son believed it. I slowly closed my eyes. The room was quiet. Christmas would still come, but this year it would bring no miracles. Only darkness and betrayal growing inside me like a silent fire, one that hadn't yet ignited, but I knew someday soon it would burn. I've always loved Christmas. That moment when the lights slip through every window frame, the faint scent of baked goods lingers in the air, and old songs hum gently through the house I've lived in for over 30 years. To me, it was never just a holiday season, but a testament to the peace I had spent a lifetime preserving. This year, I prepared everything as usual, slowly, carefully, hoping Daniel, my only son, would come home. I rehung the old ornaments he once loved, changed the water in the fake flower pots I planted on the porch, then sat down and imagined a warm Christmas filled with his laughter, his wife's, and my own. After years of silence and endurance, I still believed I could mend the tiny fractures in our family. But perhaps faith is sometimes just a blade wrapped in gift paper. That afternoon, as the last ray of sunlight slid across the floor, the door flung open without a knock. Cecilia appeared. The scent of expensive perfume invaded the familiar room, smothering the aroma of the cookies I'd just baked. Her footsteps echoed evenly, decisively, like someone who'd long considered this place hers. I watched her scan the room, her gaze cold and inspecting. My first feeling wasn't anger, but a vague fear, that familiar sense of a homeowner being pushed out of their own house. She didn't look at me when she spoke, her voice high and laced with arrogance. This Christmas, I'm hosting 30 guests here. I turned unsure if I'd heard correctly. The words sliced through the quiet I'd cherished. She dropped onto the sofa, pulled out her phone, tapping away like she belonged to everything in this room. I forced a small smile, my voice trembling slightly. 30 guests? That's quite a lot. And what about me, dear? She looked up, eyes cold as steel, mouth curling faintly. Anywhere's fine, just don't be in front of me. Her words dropped to the floor like a heavy stone. I froze. For a moment, I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing in the house had changed, yet everything suddenly felt unfamiliar. The family photos were still there, the curtains still swayed gently in the breeze, but between her and me, the distance had grown far beyond the silent years. I forced another smile, but my voice caught. What did you say? Cecilia set her phone down, crossed her arms, and stared with thinly veiled disdain. I already said I'm hosting the party. This house is spacious, elegant, and perfect for entertaining. You should take a break. Don't do anything, just stay out of the way. I tried to remain calm, studying her more closely. I was used to that polished exterior since the day Daniel brought her home. It had always been fake smiles and calculated sweetness. But never had I imagined a day when she'd boldly strip me of my place in this very home. In her eyes, I was no longer her husband's mother, just an obstacle, an outdated fixture with no more value. Outside, the wind howled, dry leaves swirling at the window. I felt like someone standing in a storm without shelter. This house was once the place my ex-husband and I built, the place that held Daniel's first cries, the place I promised myself I'd grow old peacefully. But now, every wall seemed to obey Cecilia's commands. I looked down at my hands, trembling, not with anger, but pity for myself for having yielded for too long, letting others believe my silence meant weakness. Cecilia stood voice smooth as if signing a contract. I'll invite my relatives, some of Daniel's colleagues, and a few close friends. Everyone will be here. Oh, don't worry, I'll hire someone to clean up. No need for you to bother. I could hear the triumphant pride in every word. She had planned everything, calculated it all, and I was merely a detail to be erased so her picture could be perfect. I stepped back lightly, resting against the chair. Memories flooded in. The day she first walked into this house, I told myself to open my heart, to let my son be happy. I tried to learn to call her daughter, even when the word caught in my throat. I believed that patience could fix the small cracks in our family. But it turns out my silence had only laid the foundation for her arrogance. Do whatever you want. But I meant to say more, but Cecilia turned away, hand raised, as if to end the conversation. I don't need you to teach me how to take charge. Just don't get in my way. Then she walked to the door, her heels clicking sharply each step, carving into the tiles the marks of conquest. I watched her back until the door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the house, soft yet heavy. The room fell into silence. I could hear the ticking clock on the wall, as if counting down to something about to break. I sat down, hands clenched tightly together, trying to steady my breath. A cold chill ran down my spine, not from the weather, but from the realization I had likely known all along. After all these years, this house was no longer mine. I looked around, trying to reassure myself, to believe that something here still belonged to me. But every corner bore Cecilia's imprint. The new crystal glasses on the table weren't mine. The cream-colored curtains she replaced last week weren't mine. Even the painting I once chose with my husband, she had taken it away. I didn't recognize this place anymore. I ran my hand across the wooden table, fingertips brushing over the old scratches. I remembered past Christmases when Daniel was little, running around the tree, laughing through the house. Back then, everything was simple, pure. I thought those memories would shield me from loneliness, but now they only deepened the pain, because I realized I was repeating my own mother's mistake, the woman who stayed silent until she was pushed out of her own life. I stood and looked out the window. Christmas lights from the neighbor's house flickered. Children laughed, adults chatted. The world seemed happy, except for me. I took a deep breath, something shifting in my chest like a small crack opening. Maybe it was the start of anger or of freedom. I didn't know. I only knew that from this moment on, I would no longer let anyone treat me like I was nothing. Outside, the wind lashed against the porch, rattling the windows. I closed my eyes, gently listening to my heart beat slow and steady. Everything inside me was breaking apart and coming back together. And in that moment, I understood I had to do something. Not to seek revenge, but to reclaim the part of my life that had been taken from me. I don't quite remember the last time I saw Ethan, only that it was a drizzling afternoon and I was sitting on the bench outside the old bakery waiting for the weight in my chest to ease. A tall figure approached, and a deep voice I hadn't forgotten said, "Mother Margaret." I looked up and saw that face, strong, composed, but in those eyes still lingered something from the boy who once trembled in my arms. 3 years had passed. The child who'd been beaten and abandoned had grown into a man with a stable job, shoulders steady, as though life could no longer knock him down. Ethan bowed and sat beside me. The drizzle dampened his pant legs, but he didn't seem to care. "I came because I felt something was wrong with you," he said, eyes gazing into the distance. I chuckled, my voice husky, still as perceptive as ever. He nodded slightly, asked nothing more, just sat in silence as if waiting for me to say what I had kept buried all this time. I told him everything, about the approaching Christmas, about Cecilia, about the insults and the phone call that had left me numb. Ethan listened, his eyes darkening. I knew his mind was boiling. He had always been quick to anger at injustice, especially when it came to me. I remembered the day he arrived at the shelter, his face bruised, eyes filled with fear. I couldn't walk away. I filed the papers, adopted him, and from that day, he became the rare calm in my lonely years. The bond between Ethan and me never needed explaining. He called me Mom with a natural ease, and I never felt the need to draw lines between adopted or biological. He lived on his own, worked as a design engineer, but every weekend he'd visit, bringing small things he said I might need. Daniel didn't know Ethan existed. I deliberately kept it that way, afraid Cecilia would twist the relationship and use it to smear me. Ethan looked at me for a long time after I finished. His usually composed face softened, then tightened with anger. "I'll go find them," he said, voice low. "I want Daniel to know the kind of woman he married." I placed a hand on his shoulder and calmly replied, "Don't act out of rage. I don't want anyone hurt. I just want Cecilia to expose her own true face." Ethan turned to me, his eyes filled with both affection and admiration. "You're still kind, even after all they've done." I smiled, and this time my smile wasn't weak. It was cold and sharp. "Not kind, son. Calm. The one who hides a knife always fears most the one who knows how to wait." He nodded and fell quiet for a long while. The rain tapped steadily on the awning above. I looked out to the street, the lights reflecting in puddles like metal glints. Inside me, the sorrow slowly morphed into something else, cold, solid like a stone forming in my chest. Ethan saw it in me and gently said, "If you allow me, I'll help you." I turned and our eyes met. Something unspoken passed between us in that moment, a silent promise, a connection that needed no words. I slowly shared the plan I'd been harboring. Not revenge, but a way to return the truth to where it belonged. Cecilia had made a life out of lies, of making others believe she was the victim. I wanted to tear that mask off right in the middle of the celebration she was arranging for herself. Ethan listened in silence, a fire lighting up in his eyes. "So you want this Christmas to be the day she collapses?" I nodded. "If fate wants to test people, let it. This time, I'm rewriting the script." He smiled, a quiet smile, but one filled with firm resolve. "I understand." But to let the truth land where it should, we need it to fall on its own. I have a way. He stood, opened his backpack, and pulled out a stack of papers and some technical diagrams. My company just finished developing an automatic spray system with motion sensors. If we tweak it, it could be turned into a prank at her party. I leaned in to look at wires, sensors, and controllers, all tangled in the drawings, but in Ethan's voice, it sounded simple. "All I need is to install them discreetly in a few places around the house. At the right time, it'll all trigger, and everything will be recorded." I laughed lightly, both nervous and intrigued. "Are you turning my house into a stage?" Ethan nodded slightly. "Yes, but this time you're the one directing the show." The way he said it made my heart tremble, not from fear, but from the feeling of being stood beside. I had lived in solitude for so long, having someone believe in me, protect me without question, made me want to cry. We spent the whole night planning. Every detail was calculated: where to place the devices, when to activate them, and how to hide the cameras and decorations. Ethan even contacted a friend in electronics to borrow miniature recording gear. If everything goes to plan, just when she thinks she's won, every bit of her deception will play out in front of everyone. I listened, heart pounding, with both dread and excitement. In that moment, I realized this might be the first time I truly felt alive. No longer the submissive mother, the woman pushed out of her own home. I had become the orchestrator, the one who held control. Part of me feared this version of myself, but another part rejoiced. I looked at Ethan and quietly asked, "What if it fails?" He replied firmly, "Then at least you won't lose in silence." When dawn broke, we walked home. The street was deserted, wind rustling through dry trees. I suddenly remembered those early days after adopting Ethan, when he was still frail, eyes sunken, always afraid of the dark. Now he was the only light left in my life. I smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, son." Ethan didn't reply, just gently squeezed my hand. The next day, he came to my house with a small box. "Mom, I finished the device." I opened it. Inside were sleek spray canisters connected to motion sensors. He demonstrated one quick move, and a thin mist shot out, forming a shimmering trail in the air. It won't cause harm, but it'll turn everything into a disaster for someone wrapped in a perfect image. I looked at him, both worried and proud. Ethan lifted his head, eyes glowing like fire. "Mom, this Christmas, no one will forget." That morning, as I was making tea, the sudden slam of the door made the porcelain cup in my hand tremble. Cecilia walked in, her face meticulously made up, hair neatly curled, but her presence exuded dominance as if this were her house. She didn't greet me, didn't even look at me, just swept her eyes around the room with a scrutinizing glare. "This place still isn't right. Clean everything again, especially the living room. I'm having guests over this Christmas, and everything must be perfect." Her voice was ice cold, each word tossed like an order. I set the cup down and quietly looked at her. "Cecilia, this is my house. I don't think I'm obligated to clean it the way you want." She laughed, a cruel, mocking laugh. "Your house? You should remember, Daniel already said this place belongs to us now. The sooner you accept that, the less trouble you'll cause." She stepped closer, her high heels clicking sharply against the floor. I want the tree in the center of the room, the lights evenly hung, and the dining table set for 30 guests. You know what to do." I didn't respond, my eyes resting on her hands, hands that wore the diamond ring Daniel had bought using my savings. She noticed the silence and scoffed. "Are you mad? You should be glad I'm letting you stay to witness a proper party." Her voice dripped with disdain, a sound so familiar it had nearly become the house's background noise. I turned away and poured more tea into the cup, my voice calm. "Do you need anything else?" She squinted, her gaze flickering with irritation. "You still think you're on my level? Don't forget I lost my child because of you. You owe me a life." Her words rang through the room like metal scraping glass, sharp, cold, and enough to make me freeze. I thought I was used to her venom, but this time was different. I turned to meet Cecilia's eyes. In her gaze, I no longer saw a grieving mother, but someone weaponizing pain. "You still believe?" That I asked, my voice low but firm. "Believe? I know, Margaret. That day you stressed me so much that I had to be hospitalized. If it weren't for you, my child would still be alive. You killed it." I took a deep breath, feeling the blood rush in my veins. "Are you saying this just to feel innocent? To sleep better at night?" Cecilia took half a step back, not out of fear, but surprise. Maybe for the first time in all the years we lived together, she heard my voice without a tremble. I stepped forward, locking eyes with her. "I've had enough, Cecilia. Say whatever you want about me, but don't use an innocent soul as your excuse for cruelty." She furrowed her brows, her voice rising. "What do you know about loss? Have you ever been pregnant? Do you know what it feels like to watch your own blood leave you because of someone heartless like you?" I replied slowly, each word cutting clear. "I know what it's like to lose a child. I lost my husband, and I lost my son the day he chose to believe you instead of his own mother. And you only lost something you never knew how to cherish." Cecilia's face twisted. She stepped so close I could feel her breath. "Are you threatening me?" I looked straight into her eyes. "No, I'm telling you that everything you've done will come back to you in ways you won't expect." My voice wasn't angry anymore. It was steady, and that steadiness unsettled her. It was more dangerous than any threat. Cecilia laughed a warped laugh. "You're insane. This Christmas I'm throwing the biggest party ever. Everyone will see I'm the perfect woman. And you'll sit there again, just a useless old shadow." I smiled faintly. "You're right. Christmas will be perfect, just not the way you think." Those words made her freeze. I saw her eyes falter. In that brief moment, I knew I'd struck the most fragile chord inside Cecilia, the fear of losing control. She stared at me, her voice slightly shaking. "What are you going to do?" I tilted my head and said softly, "You'll understand what justice feels like." The air in the room thickened. Cecilia bit her lip, trying to reclaim her poise. "Who do you think you are to teach me a lesson?" I chuckled, a laugh as cold as wind. "I'm not teaching anyone. I'm just returning exactly what I received." She stared, torn between defiance and doubt. I saw it, just a flicker of fear in her eyes. She flipped her hair back, clinging to her arrogance. "I don't have time for your nonsense. Clean the house. I'm bringing things over this afternoon, and I don't want to see you hovering around when the guests arrive." I nodded. "Fine. But make sure you really want me gone, because once I'm gone, there'll be no one left to protect you from yourself." That made Cecilia pause in the doorway. She turned back, eyes sharp enough to pierce through me. "You are threatening me?" I answered slowly, "No, I'm just giving you a heads up so you're not too shocked." Then I walked past her, heading up the stairs. Her expensive perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the old wood scent of the house, creating a stifling, suffocating blend. I heard her stomp behind me, then her voice sharp as a blade. "You just wait, Margaret. After this Christmas, this house will have my name on it. I'll show everyone you're nothing but a pathetic old relic." I stopped, turned, and my gaze was ice. "You're wrong, Cecilia. This Christmas, you'll learn what justice truly means." She opened her mouth to reply, but her voice caught in her throat. In that instant, I saw the confusion flash across her face. The proud eyes that always looked down on me flickered with uncertainty. Maybe for the first time, Cecilia realized the woman she used to dismiss was no longer the fragile shadow haunting this house. I said nothing more, just quietly walked up the stairs, leaving her standing there alone in the vast living room. The door closed behind me, muffling my heavy breath. I leaned against the wall, heart churning. In that moment, I knew every line had been crossed, and this time there was no turning back. Downstairs, I heard Cecilia staggering out. Her once arrogant voice faltered, and something in its broken rhythm made me smile, a faint smile of someone who had finally stepped out of her own fear. I woke as the sky began to pale, weak sunlight seeping through the thin curtains, casting a soft golden hue across the room. Everything was so still that I could hear the ticking of the clock. I sat up, opened the small drawer beside the bed, and pulled out the sketch Ethan had left the night before. The lines were dense with tiny arrows indicating installation directions and symbols only an engineer like him would fully understand, but to me, it looked like a map leading straight to the truth. I smiled faintly and whispered to myself, "It's time." Ethan arrived right on schedule. As soon as he walked in, he shrugged off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and his eyes lit up in the morning glow. "I brought everything, just need a few hours." I nodded silently. There was no need for words between us. One look was enough. The bright living room had become a makeshift work site. Ethan unpacked his tools, circuits, sensors, coils of wire, and tiny spray canisters engineered with precision. I looked at the array laid out across the table and felt a strange mix of apprehension and thrill. Ethan stood beneath the chandelier, pointing to its sleek metallic frame. "You like this one?" I gave a small smile. "It's beautiful, but it's about to become unforgettable," he grinned. "Exactly. We're turning it into a mini firework machine. When the motion sensor is triggered, it'll spray lights and colored powder. Don't worry, it's harmless." I watched him climb the ladder and unscrew the bottom of the chandelier. Beneath the sparkling crystals were wires as fine as hair. Ethan carefully added a small circuit and inserted a micro sprayer at the center. Once done, he pulled down a length of decorative ribbon and wrapped it expertly, concealing everything. As I watched, my thoughts drifted to Cecilia, the woman who once saw this house as her trophy. She adored showing off, was obsessed with perfection, and that obsession had blinded her. Now that very pride would welcome the gift I had prepared. After finishing the chandelier, Ethan wiped his forehead and asked, "Ready for the curtain?" I nodded and led him to the front door. "She'll step through here first. It's the perfect spot." Ethan opened 5 paint buckets, each gleaming under the lights, red, blue, yellow, silver, and pink. "I'll rig them inside the draped fabric to form a hanging veil. When the door opens hard enough, the sensor will trigger and paint will spray." I brushed the edge of the fabric, the cold slipping across my fingertips. Every thread, every layer of color carried my pride. I didn't tremble, didn't hesitate, only felt an eerie calm. This house, once a suffocating cage, was now a canvas I was redrawing by hand. I paced slowly around the living room, observing every corner. Each placement, each object, now held new meaning, not as symbols of conquest, but as proof of reclamation. I whispered, barely audible, "She wants this house. Then let her have it the way she truly deserves." Ethan paused, looked up, catching every word. There was a flicker of respect in his eyes. Once the paint and lighting were finished, Ethan pulled 2 tiny cameras from his bag, no bigger than a thumb. "I've got 2, you choose the spots." I pointed behind the wooden cabinet and above the liquor shelf, both with a full view of the room. "Here, the truth needs witnesses, and witnesses must see everything." Ethan chuckled. "You're starting to sound like me." I replied softly, "I'm just learning to survive in a younger person's world, but by playing by their rules." He installed the cameras in silence, his movements precise like a soldier setting mines. The room slowly took shape into a chessboard where I held the first move. Every device was hidden beneath shimmering Christmas decor ribbons, twined as if they belonged. But I knew beneath the gloss lay a truth Cecilia would never see coming. When everything was ready, Ethan ran a systems test. The lights flickered, then shut off. A soft chime following, signal confirmed. He looked at me. "Mom, it's all set." I nodded, feeling a chill surge through me, not from fear, but the power of being in control. I walked slowly around the room, eyes lingering on the chandelier. It still sparkled, but now beneath its beauty lay a perfectly engineered machine, ready to explode in light and color. "Do you think we've gone too far?" I asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, we're just helping the truth be seen. People only believe what they witness." I smiled. "You're right." I paused, placing my hand on the old wooden table. Every scratch was a scar from years of silent hurt. Today, I turned it into the foundation of justice reclaimed. We cleared every trace, stray wires and droplets of paint. Ethan scanned the room one final time, satisfied. "It's good. Now we wait for her to step in and everything will play out." I nodded and asked gently, "And you'll be outside monitoring from my laptop. If anything goes wrong, I'll shut it down." I exhaled reassured. Ethan was always meticulous. That made me believe this was the right path. With everything in place, we sat down. The room was strangely quiet, lit only by the glimmering Christmas lights we'd just put up. I looked around, feeling as if a weight had finally lifted. Ethan looked over, voice soft. "Do you regret it?" I answered, "No. Some things, if I don't do them, I'll never be myself again." That afternoon, as Ethan left, I stood on the porch watching his figure disappear. Light rain had begun to fall, droplets gathering cool on my skin. I stepped back into the house, surveying the transformed space. It was still the same house, but nothing was the same. It no longer felt like a prison, but a stage where the traitor would give her own performance. I picked up the small remote Ethan had handed me and pressed it. A faint beep, the chandelier flashed briefly, then dimmed, confirmation that the system was armed. I looked around. Every cell in my body felt awakened. I smiled, a sharp, thin smile, like a blade, just enough to sever the fear that had bound me for years. I sat down, poured myself a cup of tea, and listened to the rain tap the roof. Inside me rose a strange sensation, not joy, not hatred, but a quiet peace after a long storm. I once believed silence was the only choice. Now I understand, sometimes silence is the most brutal strike of all. Outside, the wind stirred the light strings gently. The room shimmered like every Christmas before, except this year, I alone knew what waited beneath that peaceful facade. I set my cup down, drew a deep breath, and closed my eyes. everything was ready. I replied softly, "Don't worry, nothing will be left." That sentence lightened my heart. Cecilia walked away, her steps echoing confidently across the tiles like a queen awaiting her coronation. I stood still, watching her figure vanish behind the door, then turned to look at the house. Light from the window cast tiny shimmering dots across the table and floor. Everything seemed peaceful, but beneath that calm, I knew something was waiting to change everything forever. That afternoon, I packed my things. A small suitcase, a few clothes, a passport, and an old notebook. I didn't need much because this trip wasn't about escaping. It was about ending. I locked the drawer and gave the room one last glance. The house looked different now. Clean, pristine, and still. A silence so perfect that anyone stepping in would believe it held a warm Christmas spirit. But I knew beneath that shell, everything was stretched tight like a wire ready to snap. I stepped into the yard, inhaling deeply. The wind carried the scent of pine and the sharp chill of the season. I touched the gate, heard the soft clink of metal, then locked it with a new padlock. The click rang out firm and final. I slipped the key into my coat pocket, took one last look around. It felt like something old inside me had just been cut away. The taxi pulled up outside the gate, and the driver asked if I was sure I wanted to leave on a holiday. I smiled. Perfect timing. He nodded and helped with the luggage. As the car rolled away, I looked back through the window. The house stood still, its Christmas lights blinking as if saying farewell. I whispered in my head, "Goodbye, old home. From now on, she'll be the only one who remembers you." My flight departed that evening. While waiting, I sat in the airport lounge watching families gather together. Children laughed, busy men made holiday calls, and I silent as ever. Not lonely, just at peace. I felt every breath, every heartbeat free of burdens. Maybe I'd grown old a long time ago, but today I finally felt alive. My phone rang, Cecilia's name on the screen. I stared for a moment, then silenced it. A message followed short. "Where did you go? I need table confirmation." I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another one, tone sharper. "Don't pull anything stupid. Answer me now." Still silence. Second call, then a third. By the fourth, her voice came through voicemail. "Are you messing with me, you crazy old bitch? You think you can piss me off?" I smiled and powered off the phone. When the boarding announcement echoed, I stood, pulled my suitcase. Everyone else moved in a rush. Only I walked slowly, shedding the last layers of weight. The aircraft door opened, cold air rushing in. I found a window seat, buckled in, and closed my eyes. Outside, the street lights faded, becoming a soft glow beneath the metal wings. The flight attendant offered water, and I took it, sipping slowly. The coolness soothed my throat. I pulled out my laptop and powered it on. The screen lit up with the camera system's logo. Ethan had set up remote access. With a stable connection, I could monitor the whole house. I planned to wait until the flight leveled out, but something inside urged me not to wait. While the other passengers talked or slept, I put on headphones and logged in. The screen shifted to the main interface, and 4 small windows appeared: front door, living room, stairs, and kitchen. Everything was still. I saw the tree glimmering in warm light, the chandelier perfectly aligned, the curtains gently hanging, and everything looked eerily serene. On one corner of the dining table, light reflection revealed every detail, peaceful to a fault. The plane began to taxi, engines humming. I looked out the window, then back at the screen. In one corner, the motion sensor light at the front door flickered. I froze. The cursor moved instinctively, enlarging the frame. Outside, a car had just pulled up. I saw a shadow, probably Cecilia. She had arrived earlier than expected. But then I noticed she wasn't alone. 2, Then 3 others stepped out. One held a large gift box and another carried food. They laughed, voices spilling into the mic. "Miss Cecilia, is Mrs. Margaret home?" The question stopped my heart. Cecilia replied curtly, "No, she's gone, but it doesn't matter. This house is mine now." I sat still, eyes locked on the screen. Every movement slowed. The gate opened and the group began entering. Cecilia turned around, scanning the area, then said something the mic barely caught. "This Christmas, I'll show everyone I'm the real lady of this house." I noticed my hands trembling. Below, the system detected indoor motion sensor lights blinking and a faint beep echoed. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Tension crept into my chest. I glanced aside and saw the attendant checking seatbelts, then looked back at the screen. The living room door opened, and in the tiny frame, the chandelier began to shimmer brighter than usual. From the airplane's laptop screen, I saw the image tremble slightly, sounds crackling from the camera's microphone. The iron gate remained locked. Outside, a long line of cars had just pulled up. More than a dozen people stepped out, well-dressed, carrying gifts, chatting excitedly. Among them, Cecilia walked forward, her expression a mix of confusion and pride. She hadn't expected me to truly be absent. I saw her try to smile and wave at her relatives, but when she realized the gate was locked, that smile faded. An older man with an authoritative posture, likely Cecilia's uncle, asked with suspicion, "Why's the gate closed? Where's Mrs. Margaret?" Cecilia fumbled. "She went to the market. She likes surprises." A young woman beside him remarked, "But the house looks completely dark. Doesn't seem like anyone's inside." Cecilia swallowed hard, eyes darting back and forth, then pulled out her phone and called me. The call rang 3 times, then disconnected. I smiled, hand resting on my glass of water. The screen reflected the cabin lights, while the camera image grew increasingly chaotic. She called again, this time her tone sharper. "Mom, where are you? Everyone's here. Open the gate." No reply. I saw her struggling to stay composed, veins popping in her neck. Someone in the group chuckled awkwardly. Maybe she forgot. Cecilia turned and snapped at the driver. "Break the gate." The driver hesitated. "Ma'am, this is a new iron lock. We'll need a cutting tool." Cecilia barked, "Then call someone now." Her voice cracked with irritation as the guests behind her exchanged uneasy glances. I watched them wait. A few children cried, and an elderly woman fanned herself with the program leaflet. Cecilia forced a smile. "Just a little hiccup, don't worry." 15 minutes later, the sound of an engine roared. A young man arrived with tools. When the cutting blade touched the iron, sparks burst forth. I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady, every second ticking like the countdown of a symphony. The gate snapped open and Cecilia nearly screamed with joy. "Come in, everyone, come in." She led the way, her bright red dress standing out among the crowd. Then it all happened in an instant. As she pushed the main door open, the motion sensor triggered. Within seconds, 5 paint buckets were activated, their contents spraying wildly, pouring directly onto them like a dazzling downpour. My screen lit up. A scream pierced the air, followed by others. Panic erupted as people stumbled back, their clothes soaked in splashes of red, blue, yellow, and purple, a ridiculous mess of color. A child wailed. A woman clutching her purse shrieked, "Oh my God, what is this?" A man drenched in paint, his face burning red, shouted, "Miss Cecilia, what kind of stunt is this?" I saw Cecilia freeze, her mouth agape, hands trembling. The once glorious red dress was now smeared with dripping paint. Her meticulously styled hair clumped and matted, droplets running from her forehead to her lips. Her face, that face, I would never forget. a portrait of horror, shame, and despair. Before anyone could recover, a second sound echoed a small click. Then the chandelier above blazed into full brightness. The entire room was flooded with blinding light. A beat later, from the gaps between crystal ornaments, many fireworks shot out, bursting brilliantly. Christmas music played, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," filling the air, blending with the chaos. The scene before me was absurd. Paint-covered relatives running around amidst the fireworks and cheerful music, while Cecilia stood frozen in the center of the foyer, hands clutching her head, eyes wide with disbelief. The fireworks cast fleeting reflections on her face, so dazzling, so mercilessly beautiful. An older man, likely Uncle Alejandro, stepped forward, his face stormy. "Miss Cecilia, what is going on? Are you mocking us?" She stammered, "No, it's not me. I had no idea." Another woman snapped, "You invited us to a house full of traps. What did you think this was? A festival?" Cecilia looked around, searching for something to cling to. "No, Mrs. Margaret, she did this. I swear it was her." But her voice was drowned out by the music, her defense sounding like a meaningless scream. I saw a man step forward, his voice heavy. "You say Mrs. Margaret did this, but you're the host, aren't you? You sent the invitations. You promised dinner, gifts, a grand party?" Cecilia burst into tears, both hands clutching her dress. I just wanted a perfect Christmas." A woman scoffed. "Perfect? You've lied to all of us. You said this house was yours, that your mother-in-law gave it to you. You said your husband was getting promoted, that you were opening your own restaurant. How long have you been lying to this entire family?" The accusations pelted her like stones. She collapsed to her knees, hands shaking, sobs caught in her throat. "No, it's not like that," but no one listened. The older man waved his hand, commanding, "I've had enough. Everyone out. I don't want to be here another second." I watched through the camera. Cecilia's relatives departed one by one, wiping off paint, tossing tissues, and some even throwing their gift boxes to the ground. It looked like a wrecked painting beneath glittering chandeliers, the Christmas music still playing joyfully cruel. Cecilia staggered to her feet, screaming in despair, "Mrs. Margaret, I know you're watching. You're a monster." She looked around as if the camera might answer. I sat on the plain screen, glow on my face. I didn't smile. I simply watched. Part of me felt cold, another part weightless. Justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it only needs truth exposed in the light. A voice rang out on camera, unfamiliar yet commanding. "Cecilia, what is going on?" Everyone turned toward it. I recognized the silhouette instantly, Daniel. He stood at the door, shirt wrinkled, face stunned eyes scanning the wreckage. I saw Cecilia flinch and turn, lips trembling. "Daniel, I don't know what happened. I was set up." Daniel walked slowly, eyes locked on her. "Set up? You threw this party, invited everyone, and now this circus?" His voice was low, tired, laced with disappointment. Cecilia stepped toward him, trying to grab his hand. "You have to believe me. It was her, Mrs. Margaret." Daniel stepped back, avoiding the paint-stained hand. His eyes shifted from shock to doubt. I placed a hand on my chest, feeling my heartbeat. In that moment, I knew the real storm was only just beginning. I sat still in the airplane cabin, my laptop resting on the small tray table, its screen casting a faint glow on my face. Outside the window, white clouds stretched like silk ribbons, and far below, half a world away, my house had become the stage for a perfect tragedy. I took a sip of wine, savoring the light bitterness on my tongue. The camera footage shimmered, each frame so clear I could see every breath. Christmas music still echoed in Cecilia's ruined home. Her dress was stained with paint, her face smeared and trembling as she struggled to hold on to the last shred of dignity amidst the chaos. I tilted my head, watching like an audience member to a film I'd written myself. Every beat went exactly as planned, every reaction, every scream, every tear. I felt no joy, no satisfaction, only something strange. My heart felt lighter. The guilt, the resentment, the shame of all those years melted away like thin ice beneath the sun. I whispered to myself, "That's justice. No blood, no bullets, just the truth." In the frame, Daniel stepped further into the room, his eyes scanning as he tried to grasp what was unfolding. Cecilia approached, her voice hoarse. "Daniel, you have to believe me. Your mother did all this. She set me up." Daniel stood silent, not answering. He looked around. The chandelier still sparkled, the tree still twinkled, but surrounding it were splashes of paint and stunned faces. "You said my mother did?" With his voice was low, not angry, but doubtful. Cecilia grabbed his hand, her eyes glistening. "You know she hates me. She's always tried to tear us apart. This Christmas, she wanted to destroy me." I pressed my lips together, a faint smile crossing. Hearing it, I felt precisely how Cecilia was clinging desperately to her final lie. Her voice rose, cracking through the tears. "She ruined my life. Can't you see? She made you hate me, made everyone humiliate me." Her words turned a few heads in the room, but no one spoke. Daniel slowly pulled his hand away. "What are you even saying, Cecilia? You're turning this into a disaster. My mother's not even here. You see that she never showed up." I leaned back, eyes still locked on the screen. "Exactly, Daniel," I murmured. "She didn't have to be there for you to see the truth." But Cecilia wasn't done. She screamed, "You're defending her, the woman who caused our child's death, and you still trust her?" I heard something shatter, probably a wine glass on the floor. Daniel looked straight at his wife, not with anger now, but with something heavier, disappointment. "What are you talking about?" he asked quietly, exhausted. "You never really understood," Cecilia said, her voice trembling. "She made me miscarry. She stressed me out, kept me awake, made me suffer." I sat in silence, hand resting on my wine glass. That story, that accusation, had been Cecilia's refrain for the past 2 years, the blade she used to sever the bond between my son and me. Now she repeated it before everyone, like someone peeling off their own mask. I watched Daniel's face on the screen, saw his eyes darken. I knew he was recalling every moment, every time I tried to explain, every time he turned away, choosing his wife over his mother. I exhaled slowly, no longer bitter, only deeply sad, the kind of sadness that comes from knowing everything in advance. Cecilia kept crying, paint streaking down her cheeks with her tears. I lost our baby because of her. If she had just left me alone, things would have been different. Daniel stepped back, fists clenched. His voice dropped. "Enough, Cecilia. How many times have you said that? You've used it to justify every wrong thing you've done. You turned pain into an excuse to hurt others." She raised her head, eyes wild. "You think I wanted this?" Everyone around them began to back away in silence. The air grew heavy, the fireworks on the ceiling had stopped, and only the blinking lights remained, like the dying glow of a ruined celebration. I heard Cecilia's ragged breaths through the mic mingled with the metallic clatter of overturned paint cans. Each sound echoed like notes in a symphony of collapse. Daniel spoke slowly. "I've heard enough of your blame. I want the truth." Cecilia was silent for a few seconds, then broke down, falling to her knees. "I just wanted you to understand. She never saw me as family. I lived in fear, in pressure under her gaze." Daniel looked at her, brows tightly furrowed. "What kind of pressure makes you lie to my whole family? Does it make you borrow money under her name? Open credit cards under mine?" I saw Cecilia flinch, her expression shifting from fear to shock. "Who told you?" she stammered. Daniel answered, "Valeria. She sent me everything." The room seemed to freeze. Cecilia stammered, "No, I didn't know anything." But Daniel cut her off. "And one more thing," his voice sharpened. "You told our relatives this house was ours, that my mother signed it over, didn't you?" Cecilia slumped, speechless. Daniel sighed. "I don't even know who I married anymore." The room fell into absolute silence. Watching it, I remembered every time I tried to tell my son that his wife wasn't what she seemed. Now he saw it for himself, and I didn't need to say a word. I took my final sip of wine, letting the warmth spread through my throat. The satisfaction didn't come from vengeance, but from the moment truth revealed itself. Cecilia was now facing something she never thought she would: the gaze of everyone she'd deceived. On the screen, she made one last attempt. "Daniel, I did it all for you, for our child. You don't understand. If it weren't for her, our baby would still be alive. Do you hear me?" Her voice cracked nearly a scream. Daniel shook his head. "Don't use our child to cover your mistakes anymore." Cecilia jumped up, tears streaming, lips trembling. "Easy for you to say. You know nothing. If it weren't for your mother, my child, not yours, would still be alive." I flinched, my fingers frozen on the glass. Everything on screen stopped, as if the whole room turned to ice. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes shifting from doubt to devastation. I saw his face clearly, pale lips pressed tight. Cecilia clamped a hand over her mouth, realizing what she just blurted, but it was too late. I heard murmurs in the room, a male voice whispering, "Not his child?" The plane rumbled gently and cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber. I stared at the screen, a faint smile spreading across my lips. Every plan, every preparation, every pain I had carried for years had all led to this moment. The truth had risen at last without me ever laying a hand on it. On the screen, I saw Daniel frozen in place, his face as if someone had just slapped him hard. His lips trembled, but it took him a while to utter a few words. "Not mine." That voice cracked so frail, I could almost hear his heart shattering. Everyone in the room turned to Cecilia, their eyes glued to her as though they had just witnessed an explosion. Everything in that house, from the Christmas lights to the lingering scent of fresh paint, stood still. Only the labored breaths of a woman who had just ended everything echoed in the silence. Cecilia stepped back, trembling, hand over her mouth, eyes wild like someone cornered. You misheard. I didn't mean." But her voice dissolved into the air, each word falling like shards of broken glass. Daniel stepped forward, clutching her hand, his voice trembling with rage. "Say it was the baby, not mine." She remained silent. A tear slid down, but no one believed it anymore. Daniel shouted, "Answer me, Cecilia." Cecilia screamed, reaching for his hand, but Daniel pulled away. "Yes, okay," she yelled. "Yes, it was someone else's, someone you never knew. I lost it. And she laughed. "Are you happy now?" The room went dead quiet. People exchanged looks, then turned away in silence. That sentence was the final knife severing the last fragile thread between two people who once called each other husband and wife. I sat on the plane, clutching a glass of wine. My heart no longer ached, only emptiness remained. The truth had been laid bare, cruel and undeniable. Years of humiliation, suspicion, and blame evaporated in seconds. I watched Daniel lower his head, hands shaking, then raise it with eyes that no longer belonged to the naive boy I once knew, but to a man who had finally awakened. "How long have you been lying to me, Daniel?" asked hoarsely. Cecilia screamed, "You don't understand. I just wanted to keep you. I was scared of losing you, scared she'd turn you against me." Daniel stared at her eyes colder than wind. "No one turned me away except you. Everything you did only proved you never loved anyone but yourself." She collapsed, hands clinging to the edge of his shirt. "Don't leave me, Daniel, please." But he had already turned. The crash of a falling chair rang out, sharp, final, then silence. I heard Daniel say, clear and firm, "I want a divorce." The words echoed through the laptop speaker, and I instinctively closed my eyes. It was the first time I'd heard my son speak like that, with the voice of someone who had finally grasped what truth meant. The house fell into silence. Cecilia crumpled on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, but no one came to her. Even her own relatives, the ones who had laughed at the party, quietly walked out. Only the brittle sound of drying paint remained, and the weary breaths of someone who had lost. The plane began its descent. I turned off the screen and leaned back. Outside, the Bali sky blazed in sunlight, waves rolling in vivid blue. I smiled, a peace settling in me like never before. That old house, once tainted with lies, now felt pure. It might still reek of paint, still bear the remnants of a ruined party, but to me, it was the cleanest place on earth because the truth had finally been set free. I landed in Bali at sunset. On the beach, people were singing Christmas songs in a language I didn't understand, but the melody calmed my soul. I walked along the shore, feeling as if I were stepping out of a long dream. The sea was salty, the wind cold, but I felt warm, knowing I had completed a journey through pain to reclaim myself. That night, I returned to the hotel, opened the window, and looked down at the glowing streets. I brewed a cup of tea and reopened my laptop. The camera system was still on. I saw Daniel cleaning up the mess in the house. His hair fell over his eyes, his shoulders thin but his gaze resolute. Cecilia was no longer in the frame. Only the sound of wind rustling through twinkling lights remained, like a belated toast to a rightful ending. I touched the screen where Daniel's face appeared clearly. I wanted to say something but stopped. I didn't need to apologize or ask for forgiveness. The bond between mother and son had been wounded but not destroyed. It was merely waiting for the day it could be touched again in silence. Then the phone buzzed. A new message. I opened it, just one line. "Mom, I want to come home." I froze, my eyes stinging. Those trembling words were so sincere they rocked my heart. All those years of waiting, all those moments I longed to hear that sentence, and now it came gently without excuses. I leaned back, quietly replied, "Home is always open. Come back, my son." Outside, fireworks lit up the sky. Laughter and voices echoed everywhere. This Christmas had no feast, no joyful music, yet it was the truest Christmas I had ever known, a season of freedom, of peace. I returned home a few days later. The house welcomed me with the scent of old wood and dried sunshine lingering after a storm. Everything was quiet, tidy, as if the house itself had exhaled in relief. I opened the window, letting the wind sweep away the remnants of the past. Inside, the wind chime rang gently like a greeting from an old friend. I sat in the chair where I had witnessed it all and closed my eyes. In my mind, the images played Cecilia's contemptuous gaze, Daniel's rage, and me, the silent old mother of so many years. All of it like a long film, ending with the son returning home. I didn't hate Cecilia. She had already received what she deserved. I only regretted that some people need a lifetime to understand a mother's heart. Now I understand silence isn't weakness. Silence is the way to wait until the truth grows strong enough to speak for itself. I don't need revenge because life always has a way of putting everything back in its place. Perhaps justice doesn't come in courtrooms, but in those moments when we dare to rise to let go of what hurts us. If someone out there sees themselves in this story, I only want to say, don't be afraid to lose someone unworthy. Sometimes losing them is the only way to find yourself again. Trust time, trust truth, and trust the good still left in people's hearts. If you've walked with me to the end of this story, please share it so someone out there, a mother, a child, or someone who has been hurt, knows they are not alone. Follow this channel to hear more true stories, journeys of the human spirit, where shadow and light are always intertwined. Because in the end, after everything, only the truth cannot be buried. And I, Margaret, once a woman who lost everything, have now reclaimed the most precious thing, myself.